Hello everyone and welcome back to That Engineering Girl. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ruha and I'm an electrical engineering student who's currently finishing her 16th month internship as an embedded software developer. Now I'm here sharing my life, engineering my life, both literally and figuratively. So the question is, what are we talking about today? Recently, the Pomodoro technique has flown off the roof. Like, it has gotten so incredibly popular these past few months. It's actually quite insane. Now, it's been especially popular in the studying space, so with students and student influencers raving about this technique and how much it's helped them improve their studying and become more efficient. So for those of you who don't know what the Pomodoro technique is, I'll explain that right now. So it's a way of studying, and the way it works is you study in short sprints, take a short break, and you do this 4 times, so in 4 cycles, and then you just take a longer break, and then you just repeat. So you could say you study for 30 minutes, take a 5-minute break, study again for 30 minutes, do this 4 times, and then you get a longer break, which is say 15 to 30 minutes. And then you just kind of repeat this throughout the entire day. And it supposedly makes you super efficient. Now, for those of you who know me, know that I'm really curious about productivity hacks and productivity techniques that will make me more productive and more effective and more efficient. So I was really curious about if this technique could actually do what people said it did. And we all know what happens when Ruha gets curious. Ruha gets investigative, which means I had to try it out for myself. So in this video, I'm going to be going over how I tried this out, how I set this up, in which situations did I actually end up using it, and what are my concluding thoughts on it. Does it work or does it not work? Does it live up to everything people rave about it? So with that, let's get into it. So as promised, let's first cover how I actually set this up. Now I have my laptop here because you best believe I have details for you all. So let's get into it. I first started off by trying to use the alarm app on my phone because I was not really feeling downloading a special purpose app for this specific reason. I try to stay away from downloading a lot of things. I'm a minimalist at heart, so I really just didn't want to download an app or do something extra, so I really tried to use my alarm app. But this didn't work because, one, I had to do it manually. I had to turn off my alarms, turn them on again, like the timers, so set it to 30 minutes and set it to 5 minutes, and do this all manually, which was really jarring, to be honest, when you're trying to study. And then on top of that, I could not set the volume lower, because when you're studying, you just want to know, oh, the alarm has gone off. You don't need it to like wake you up in theory, as you know, your alarm sound is really loud, so if you're sleeping you can wake up. So the alarm sound was super loud, which was super jarring, and honestly it would startle you when you were studying. And I couldn't even change this because love good old Apple and iPhones, because everything is integrated and there's only one volume control. So if I turn down the volume of the timer, it would turn down the volume of all of my alarms and my ringer and everything, which I did not want because I'm extremely picky, and that is why this entire process was difficult, to say the least. Now, after this, I was like, you know what, hey, it's fine, I'll download a special purpose app. And you know what, there are some good apps for the Pomodoro technique specifically. However, this didn't work out for me again because, like you may have already guessed, I am super picky with the way my technology works, and I have notifications off for almost everything, really, for almost everything on my phone. And so I wouldn't be able to get notifications on my phone for when the timer has gone off. Not only that, but I usually keep my ringer off as well. My phone is probably 99% of the time on vibrate. So because of that, and because my phone would be on the bed or something, or like out of my sight, I would hardly ever hear it vibrating. So I would never know if the time if I've already completed my 30 minutes or my 5-minute break, and so on and so forth. So downloading a special purpose app didn't work for me either. Now, since I did the majority of my work on my personal laptop, I was like, you know what, let's do a website. Let's try out a website. And this actually worked pretty well for me. I was able to find a website that was specifically developed for the Pomodoro technique, and I finally relented and allowed notifications from this website because, you guessed it, I don't have notifications enabled on my laptop either, for reasons which I won't get into now. But I finally relented, allowed notifications, and it actually worked pretty okay. Now, my settings on the website were 30 minutes of working time and 5-minute short breaks, and then after 4 cycles of that, I would get a 15-minute long break. So with settings, configuration, trial and error out of the way, let's get into how I actually use this, like in which situations did I use it, and how did it work out for me. So I first started using the Pomodoro technique to complete assignments and miscellaneous course content related stuff. So especially for assignments like signal processing, communication networks, probability and variable or statistics, probability and statistics, course content related assignments, that kind of thing, this technique worked absolutely beautifully. And I honestly mean it was absolutely beautiful how well this technique worked for me. So it worked really, really well because it allowed my mind to stay fresh and alert with those short breaks, especially because I was not really into these assignments and I just needed to get them done essentially and do them right, but I needed to get them done. And being able to work for 30 minutes, then reward myself for 5 minutes was super helpful in, motivating me to complete my assignments, keep my mind fresh and alert. So overall, I was able to finish my assignments and this work much more efficiently than I would otherwise. Otherwise, it would take me longer to finish the assignments, my mind would feel sluggish afterwards, and I just didn't feel like doing anything. So in this context, this technique worked absolutely fantabulous. Now, I also use the Pomodoro technique at work, and I use this to do light work such as, say, reviewing some documentation templates, understanding, what are our software standards, understanding certain processes that we have in the company, maybe helping someone with something. So light work like that worked absolutely fantastic for the exact same reasons that I just talked about for why it worked with doing assignment type work. However, and this is a big however, this is not true for other cases, which I'll get into now. The Pomodoro technique was absolutely horrendous. Like, I really use that word in the correct way when I say it was horrendous and just absolutely terrible when I tried to study for final exams. If you don't already know how I study, go watch one of my previous videos where I talk about how I study for my engineering exams. But you know that process that I follow, and I follow it religiously, takes a lot of intense focus and deep mind work. Because of this, the break that would come after every 30 minutes or 45 minutes, whatever short break you set or whatever work time you set for yourself, it was so jarring. It was so incredibly jarring that I had to stop using the Pomodoro. Like, I couldn't even continue after a couple of days of doing this because it was so jarring. Instead, I went back to studying for long hours intensely and then taking a long break afterwards, even though I felt absolutely exhausted from the long study session. And why I did this and why the Pomodoro technique did not work in this case is because when I study for final exams, I need a lot of time to build relationships, visualize patterns, understand fundamentals of concepts, which is really integral, I would say, to doing well on exams and understanding content overall, because problems are not cookie cutter and you need to understand fundamentals in order to actually translate your knowledge into other domains. So because of those short sprint study sessions, I wasn't able to actually connect ideas, connect concepts, build those relationships in a strong way. And that is why it was such a bad idea to use the Pomodoro technique when studying for final exams. Now, similarly at work, when I had to do things like a software system design, which if you're not familiar with, requires reviewing a lot of state charts, reviewing what the code actually looks like, making connections with patterns, understanding how modules will be working together if it's a larger software system that you're working on. The Pomodoro technique absolutely failed when I was doing this type of work at work for the exact same reasons why it failed when I was studying for final exams. I couldn't do the deep work I needed to do in order to make the connections and accomplish the things and understand the patterns I needed to understand to get the work done, because of those 5 minutes that were constantly interrupting my work and thought process. Every single time I got interrupted, I would have to start back at square one because I hadn't actually already built those relationships or those thought processes were interrupted. Now, these were the 4 main scenarios that I used the Pomodoro technique in, and that was my experience using the Pomodoro technique. So with that, let me conclude my thoughts for you and finally answer the question, does the Pomodoro technique actually work? So the answer to that question is, it depends. It depends on what you're doing. If you're an engineer coding this main block in your system, or if you're studying for a final exam, if you're doing anything that requires any type of intense focus and deep mind work to build relationships, this technique is not for you. It's not for you in that context. However, if you're doing something that requires you to switch between tasks a lot and switch which context your mind is operating in, for example, a project manager managing multiple different projects, or a consultant meeting with many different clients in a day, this technique is definitely for you and I definitely recommend it. Now, you as a person might switch back and forth in these types of contexts, so requiring deep work or having to switch between tasks fast. So depending on where you are, decide if this is the technique for you to use to get work done. Because when it works, it really does work, I can say that. But when it doesn't work, it really does not work. So with that, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you learned more about the Pomodoro technique, and I hope this gave you insight into how things are complex. There's never a blanket answer for a question. And this is something that I've said a few times now on my channel, and I hope you're coming to understand this from watching my videos. So with that, until next time.